Welcome to Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin, and today I'll be discussing Titanic from 1953, starring Barbara Stanwyck and Clifton Webb. Some essential movie details. Many of the sets, including the ship's model, were reused for several other films after this, such as Dangerous Crossing from 1953, and in particular their dining room, cabins, grand staircase, lounge, radio room, boat deck, promenade deck, and the deck chairs. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes from 1953 used the ship's model, but it was remodified. The dining room walls, the lounge, the promenade deck, and the deck chairs once again. A Blueprint for Murder from 1953 used the ship's model, the dining room, the deck, and chairs. And finally, Women's World from 1954, which also starred Clifton Webb, only used the dining room walls. The ship model is displayed at the Marine Museum of Fall River in Fall River, Massachusetts. So all of this is from the IMDb page of Titanic from 1953. All right, so now I'll get into the plot. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I thought it was an excellent story. You really do connect with these characters, especially Barbara Stanwyck and her family, making it even more tragic when the ship sinks at the end of the film. You know, it's based on the actual tragedy, right? And from what I read, it's as close to the information we had about the Titanic at the time. Just like how in 1997, when James Cameron made that one, his version of the film, that one's even closer. So, you know, it's interesting seeing the similarities between the two. Now, obviously, it's the same, story that they're basing it off of, but nevertheless, it's really interesting seeing a lot of the similarities with the camera angles, camera shots, and all of that. Really interesting. All right, so now I'll get to my thoughts on the acting. I gave that a 5 out of 5. I thought it was superb. Really love Clifton Webb. He was excellent. He's your typical snobby Englishman, but by the end of the movie, he becomes a hero, especially when he's helping people get off the boat, and he's learning to accept, that his wife cheated on him and had this other son. And even though he's not biologically the boy's father, he decides to fully accept that by the end of the movie. And that's beautiful. It was amazing character arc, amazing whatnot. Barbara Stanwyck was fine. She wasn't in it for very much. So I would say hers was more of an extended cameo than it was, a leading lady. I mean, she's shown a lot in the promotional material and whatnot, but she's really not in the movie that much. It's really Clifton Webb's movie. All right, in regards to the directing, I thought it was amazing. I thought it had a great balance of humor and tragedy, and the great cast that was assembled, the great set pieces, the great music, and great camera work. I really owe it all to the director. I think he had a great vision for how the tragedy would have looked like. And from a 1950s lens, of course. All right, in regards to cinematography and special effects, I gave it a 4 out of 5. For the most part, I thought it was really good, but some of the models, especially for the ship itself, looked pretty fake. Now, you may say, well, this is from the 50s, we got to give it some slack, but there were some model ships in King Kong that were more convincing to me, and that came out 20 years before this one. So I think there was more work they could have done with them. But other than that, it was fine. Like I said, I really loved the camera angles, and even though the models looked kind of cheesy, especially at the end, it really did capture your emotions. It was very tragic when the ship split in half and went down and all that. Very, very touching. So in that aspect, it was great. But like I said, the ships they could have used some work. All right, in regards to the music, I gave it a 5 out of 5. And once again, within this season, we have Nearer My God to Thee playing in a movie. And once again, it still has a great effect on me. It is one of my favorite songs of all time. We sing it all the time at church. And it gives me the chills, especially when you read. Now, some sources say it didn't happen, some say it did, but just thinking that everybody knew that their death was imminent, so the music people started playing Nearer My God to Thee, and then all of the remaining passengers started singing along. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment to the movie, and really the highlight. And that is really the extent of the music. You read that they tried to make it as realistic as possible. And there's a couple other scenes where a couple college kids singing songs, but that's really it. But this to me is the real crux of it. It's amazing. I always love Near My God to Thee. I'm a sucker for it. So that's why I gave it a 5 out of 5. Now, if you're looking for a musical score or a scary music or anything like that, it doesn't really have any because they're trying to make it as realistic as possible. All right, so tallying up my score, that brings my Letterboxd score to 4.8 out of 5, which I'm rounding to a 5 out of 5. So would I recommend this movie? Yes, I would. You know, I'm probably the only person in the entire world who has not seen the 1997 version of this movie. So this is the only Titanic film other than some documentaries that I've actually seen. And from the few clips I've seen, it seems James Cameron was heavily inspired from this. You know, I'm thinking of the introduction of Barbara Stanwyck's character looks exactly like the introduction of Rose's character, or I guess Kate Winslet as Rose's character in that movie. So, like I mentioned, it seems he was inspired by this. But yeah, I would recommend this movie. It's a tragic event that happened. It's very sad what happened, the Titanic and whatnot, but it's still an interesting story. It's still a very captivating story, and they really, really got it well here. I think they captured it really, really well. And I don't know why this film isn't brought up as much when discussing Titanic movies. You know, I think the 1997 one just overshadows all the other adaptations. It's kind of weird, but also interesting why there's so many adaptations of it. I think there's at least 5 that I know of, including this and the 97 one. So I don't know what it is with the fascination with it. Maybe it's just the tragic aspect of it. I don't know, but overall, it's a great film. I recommend it. You know, if you're a fan of the 97 one, I think you would like this one too. But that's saying as a person who hasn't seen it, so I don't know. But I really liked it. And yeah, I thought it was great. All right, so those are my thoughts on Titanic from 1953. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Really Old Movies, where I discuss details about the week's particular film. New podcast episodes are released Saturdays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. All right, thank you so much. This has been Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin. Take care.